My father decided to treat me very ill the entire time I was growing up. And why would a father do that to his precious daughter? Well, it's because all he ever wanted was a boy, and that wasn't me. So, when he gets sick later on and is begging me to help him, I decide to do this. The day I was born was pretty uneventful, as you could imagine, in a house where everyone wanted to have a boy. My mom, Ella, found out she was pregnant with a child, a month after she discovered she was pregnant, and no one took it well. Especially my misogynistic father, Justin, who wanted a boy at all costs because all his friends had boys as their first child. I've never felt that I belonged in a family all my life, and I know you may think that my story is a movie, but it isn't. I'm 35, and as I type this, I feel hot tears burning my eyes. Growing up, I never got to play hide-and-seek with my dad, and he never came to any of my school games, even on days when I played. I never got birthday presents and opportunities for cute sleepovers with friends. I was always left at home. Things got really worse when my mom got pregnant again, and yes, this time, it was a baby boy. My heart broke into pieces as I saw the love I've been deprived of lavished on my younger brother, Victor. Victor became the center of attention while I practically was thrown into the background and simply left there. Most times the windows were shut and I was left alone in my room to cry. Mom always took Victor out to her parties and showered him with lots of gifts and stuff. I got none of the gifting, and whenever I confronted my mother about it, she would always tell me that the gifts were bought by my father and he did not give me one. I felt so bad. One day when I was like 16, I confronted my father and asked him why he always treated me so differently.
I don't treat you differently, Melissa. Yeah, you just have that in your silly head.
On that day, I got really upset, and I held him by the shirt crying, and my mom came, then just yanked me away, and Victor could not stop laughing at me. That day, I convinced myself that my father was not my real dad. But why did I look like him so much? I stayed in my room that day and cried my eyes out. I'm saying this so that you have a good picture of what growing up looked like for me. Although I was young, I made up my mind that I would leave the house that day since it did not seem to me like my parents were really mine, especially my father. I packed all the clothing I believed to be mine into a small bag and zipped it up. I dragged the bag downstairs and met my mom and Victor.
Melissa, take that bag upstairs now.
My dad also emerged, and they all started to shout at me. I ran upstairs and cried my eyes out. I was tired of constantly being told that I could not amount to anything, and all hope was on Victor. Victor was the one son they wanted to have. Victor was the star, the beloved child, and Melissa was only a mistake that should never have happened. Meanwhile, I was doing way better than Victor, but who cared? I was not a boy after all. After that day, things only got worse. One afternoon, my mom came into the living room from an outing with a letter in hand. Victor was watching TV while I attempted to read a book and occasionally glance at him. We didn't have the best relationship because my parents made it so.
Victor was rude to me most of the time,
so I simply kept to myself and just buried myself in school books. Mom opened the letter and waved it in excitement with a big smile on her face, and she said to Victor, "We found a way around it, and we finally got you an admission letter to the college of your dreams."
Victor squealed in excitement and ran to hug Mother.
Their noise made Dad run downstairs from his room, and I stood there in excitement waiting for her to give me news from my college as well, and it had always been my dream to go to Harvard and pursue business and finance. It took a moment for me to realize that she did not have any other letter with her. "What about mine?" I asked slowly, praying that it was in her bag and somewhere, and she forgot to bring it out. She looked at me and said, "Melissa, Harvard is expensive. I'm sure that we can't do it." She was cut in by Father, who said,
"You're not going to university. I told you that before. Deal with it. We don't have the money for both of you."
"No, you can't do that. What about me? What about my life? What about what I want to do?" Yes, 18 years old and crying because of my life right before me was just being tampered with. Victor coughed, and Dad looked at me and said,
You should be ashamed of yourself, 18 years old and utterly stupid.
No! Mom! To say something to defend me, please, and just stand by me for once in my life, and all I got was her silence. She watched as Dad said those things to me, and Victor approached me to walk past, but I could not take it. I pushed Victor out of my way and dashed outside the house with my book in hand. "Melissa!" Mom called. "Come back here!" "Do not come back here again!" I heard Dad's voice behind here and there, and I made up my mind to never return there. I was 18, I was an adult, and I had the right to choose the life that I deserved. I deserved something better than being treated like dirt simply because I was not a boy. As I left the house that day, my mind was on Winnie, my friend. I'd hoped to God that she would be home as I took the last money I had to take a bus to her house. I was done being a burden to my mom and a piece of object to my father. I wanted my freedom as I did not make myself a girl. Winnie took me in that day, and I began the journey of fending for myself and getting by without the people I would have called family. I was left all alone, and I lived my life that way with Winnie as my only family. Now, here's my dilemma. It's been almost 10 years since I left home and never looked back. I had my peace and was beginning to steer my life in that direction that I wanted to go, but last week all of a sudden I got a call from an unknown number. I did not want to pick up the call as I was used to not picking up hidden numbers. I don't know, some reason I just felt the urge to pick up the phone, and later found out that it was my mom after I answered. "Melissa, your father is very sick." I was going to hang up the call, but when I heard her sniff, I stayed to listen. "He's been very sick and, well, we need a lot of money for his surgery." She broke down and wept. I could not bring myself to think that now Mom was being emotional with me on the phone and crying when she could never stand up to Dad when he and Victor bullied me. She would be quiet and allow all those things to be said to me, and it was never easy. I don't know what she expected of me, but I was not going to sit there and act like she was not the reason I was estranged from her in the first place. I was not going to stay there and act like what had been done to me all these years was fine, because it was not. And I was still hurting from the pain that I was causing. I did not want to keep listening, so I just hung up the phone and sat to think about the whole situation. I know you think that this is some fake story. It's not. I only wished it was, or at least a nightmare that I could wake up from. But this is real. It's as real as it gets to me. My peace and calm have gone away from these people. It's about to be distorted completely. It seems like my past has come to haunt me, and I'm about to continually be in the shadow of a boy child yet again. And I'm upset. I have a question. Why now? 10 years later, and they have the audacity to call the girl they threw out and abandoned? What about the boy? What about Victor? I did not want to pick up her phone calls again, and I just want to ignore Dad because he deserves what's coming towards him. But I also don't know if that's something I should be doing. If I'm not being too cruel, I'm wrong, and what is the subtle feeling of guilt that I feel? What do I do about it? Let me know what you think. Thank you. Update number 1. Guys, I'm back just to give you an update on what's been going on with my life. Some people have said that I'm being a bad daughter for bringing this out to the public, but I assure you, my life is not yours and you have not been through the pain that I have. I want to thank you and those who have listened to me and know that I'm not a liar. So Mom would not stop calling me, and no matter how hard I tried not to pick up her calls, I usually end up feeling bad right after I let the call go to voicemail. Let's just say that I have over 20 voicemails from her in the space of a week. I decided to listen to her voicemail yesterday, and she said that he had a heart condition and needed to have surgery done. He had been calling my name and asking Mom to call me because he wanted to seek my forgiveness. I could not help but wonder what suddenly got into him. Seek my forgiveness after a long period of my life? He did not care about me and only about his son. Now he suddenly remembers me and wants my forgiveness? Well, there's something I never got to tell them since we were all so far away. Guys, I have a daughter. My girl's 4 years old and the most beautiful 4-year-old I know. My parents have never met her. Now, my mom wants me back in their life, and I cannot help but wonder, what if my daughter gets the exact same treatment I got just because she's not a boy? Well, I think my mom will give me a narrative that things have changed, but have they really? Can a leopard truly change its spots? Gabby is very smart for a 4-year-old, and it would not take long for her to find out that she was being treated differently. She would then ask me why, and a whole story of how I was treated would come tumbling from my mouth. I don't know if I want Gabby to experience the pain that I went through, and even if it would only be in the words spoken to her. I had my daughter with my current boyfriend, Dixon, at the point where I was in the bleakest moment of my life and thought I was going to give up, not only on ever having a family who would love me, but also on my own life. That's when Dixon came into my life and absolutely changed everything. We had Gabby after we had been dating for 3 years already and saw a future together. We were not married because we wanted to put some things in place first. Winnie was the one who introduced me to Dixon, and we hit things off on a great note. Dixon helped me to raise part of my tuition fee for college, and I was able to scale through college, something that my parents did not care to bother about. So I have a daughter, and I'm highly skeptical of letting my daughter come into a toxic family environment, where I grew up all my life without experiencing anything remotely close to love and affection. Because of this trauma that has been caused me, I clearly do not think that Dad deserves anything from me. But what if he dies? Will the blame be on me for not helping? Update number 2. So I decided that I would pick up my mom's phone call whenever she called and hear her out. Truth be told, I've not recovered from the trauma of how I was treated growing up, and I just quite frankly don't think that I'll ever be able to recover. You may call this wicked, but I derive some closure from having her call me to explain that they need me. Well, the picture I always got of myself was that I was some useless girl who had not worth and nothing to give. Good to hear Mom tell me that I'm needed, because all these years she could not defend me and simply stood there and agreed, with Father to treat me like trash. Yesterday, Gabby saw that I was upset after taking the call and came to sit beside me. She asked if everything was okay and if I held back my tears, and told her that it was. I don't know why I have these mixed feelings. I feel happy that I'm now needed, and at the same time I feel sad that the only time I ever got to be called was to come and offer something. I feel a lot of gaping holes in my heart that my parents really don't care about me, and it may remain that way forever. The thing is that leaving the house made me a tough girl. I had to stand up for myself. And yeah, I got jobs and saved up for college. When Dixon came along, he began to help me, but that did not stop me from working hard still. My years of hard work have earned me the comfortable life that I now live. I work in a finance company and I earn good money. I also have some money saved up for rainy days. Mom called to say that Justin, Dad's doctor, had declared that he's getting worse, and if the surgery's not done, he may become critical. Dixon came home that day, and wow. And just like Gabby noticed that I was not in the best of mood, and they asked me. I didn't want to tell him that I've been taking calls from my mother because he knew how much they had hurt me and he would want to prevent me from talking to her. Just like Gabby, he sat beside me and asked if everything was okay with me. At that point, I did not have it in me to explain to him, so I just clung to him with a tight hug. I sighed, and when I opened my mouth to explain, I just constantly had thoughts of Gabby, so I discarded it because she was there with us. My phone rang, and it was another unknown number, and I did not pick it up, but remained in the embrace of Dixon. Could it be Dad himself calling me now? Update number 3. That day, I decided that I would not pick that unknown number up because I had a right not to. I still held on to the thoughts that it could be Dad calling me, and I did not for any reason want to talk to him or see him. But guess what surprised me the morning of the next day? Yeah, it was Victor. I heard a knock on my door, and went back towards the door after just dropping Gabby at school. I thought it was Dixon who forgot something and came to pick it up, but hey, I was wrong. As I flung the door open casually, there stood Victor, my brother, staggering and fighting to hold his composure. I thought of how on earth he located me, but thought about the fact that nothing really is hidden anymore in this world.
You son of a gun. Mother called me, and you said no.
He said to me without any regard, and Victor had always been that way. I wonder if he even went to college that they so graciously paid for him to attend. I told him to watch his mouth or get the hell out. Not in my presence was I going to allow such disrespect, not even in my absence.
Dad's dying, and you don't even care. You're a bad person.
I was upset as he continued talking, and I told him to get the duck out of my property and never come back. I walked towards him and pushed him outside, and he just simply flung my hands, refusing to go. I saw that Dixon approached, and I looked at him for help. He had never seen any of them, but I know he should guess that, well, that was my brother. Dixon screamed at Victor, who was attempting to hold and twist my hand to stop or he would punch him in the face. Victor retorted that Dixon should not tell him what to do because I was his sister. Dixon finally explained that I was his wife and he needed to leave our house before Dixon did something that they would both regret. Dixon grabbed Victor by the hand and pushed him outside. His alcohol smell filled the entire room and he talked like someone who's been overdosing on drugs. He kept whining that he was a man and not a woman, so Dixon should address and treat him with respect as he staggered away. I just wiped off the beads of sweat that formed upon my head. It was exhausting to watch the drama that just unfolded, it truly was, and I was fuming. So, this was the so-called boy Dad gave his all for and just abandoned me. This was the same boy child who turned out to be completely useless, doing drugs and unable to lift a finger to help his dad. Anger burned inside me, and then I remembered that Dixon had called me his wife, which lingered as warmth in that raging moment. So, I had to fill him in on all that's been going on and that he was not aware of. The calls from my mom and the health of Dad, Dixon thought it would not be a bad idea to actually call Mom and ask what exactly the issue seemed to be. I did not see this as a great idea because I wanted my revenge, and I wanted it at all costs, but I would like to see how surprised she would be to see my phone call. I'd not called them in over 10 years. Update number 4. So, I took Dixon's advice and decided to call my mom. She did not pick up the call at my first trial, and I thought, well, maybe it's all been sorted out and they did not need money anymore. Anyways, I tried again and she picked up. She picked up the phone and said into the receiver, it was weird for me to call her mom after not saying the word for more than a decade. Melissa, she said and went mute. I was wondering why she kept mute, and I asked her if Dad was okay and if she was okay. I was actually genuinely concerned for her, and that's when she dropped the bombshell on me. He had another family outside, and she decided that she's done enough, and it's time for his other family to take care of him since he grew the family right under her nostrils. I could hear her hold back tears as she spoke to me, and I could not understand the confusion that overwhelmed me. Melissa, your father had another family outside without my knowledge. I just found out. Yeah, that kept ringing in my head, and I raised my hands to my mouth in disbelief. That could possibly not be. What did she mean by he had another family outside? I still found it difficult to completely comprehend. I told her I did not understand and needed her to explain it to me better. My once peaceful life was getting back to being dramatic yet again. I told her to explain, and that's what she did. Because he wanted a boy so much right after you were born, and before Victor was born, he had an affair and impregnated the lady who eventually gave birth to a boy. I didn't know this at all. I only found out 2 days ago when I searched the house for practically any money available so that I could use it for some of his medicine. And when I found the paternity test results of him and the kid. She broke down in tears.
I could not help but worry, what kind of man was Dad for him to have done something like that? She went quiet, and I knew what the answer to that was. He was the kind of person who only knew how to be selfish and never considered anyone else aside from himself. Even Mom, who stood by him, had no such chance, and I suddenly felt the urge to run home and just scream my lungs out at him. How could he? I paced the sitting room in anger as I listened on. I've decided to let him be. I haven't been the best mother to you, and I apologize for that, sweetie. I let my obsession with your father get the better of me, and I did not stand by you when I should have done that. I'm sorry. Dixon signaled for me to sit down, try to calm down a bit because my pacing was getting him worried. The call lasted for over an hour, with Mom filling me in on who the mistress was with the child. I finally asked her about Victor. I wanted to know if she knew that he was doing drugs and of no absolute use. I did not want to tell her that Victor came to my house and caused a ruckus, and I was only glad that my daughter was not around to witness it. She told me that he hardly came home, and the expectations of father from him are quite much, since he's a boy and got everything growing up. He does not really show up in the house. I listened as she explained to me. We ended the call, and I sat down to tell Dixon every single detail that I'd missed, and how I was scared that Gabby would grow up around the wrong kind of energy and influence if I did not address it once and for all. And I quote, I need to ducking see that dad of mine and spit in his face, I said, and stood up, and that's what led me to the next thing that I did. Update number 5. When I got to my parents' house, which I had not been to in over 10 years, I did not know what my heart would respond if the way that it did. I was overwhelmed with pain and anger once again, and I know that some of you are upset that I called them out in public, and you believe that I have no single bone of respect left in my body. Well, they did not treat me well. They treated me like dirt, especially my father. I went to his bedroom, and he turned to glance. You're here. I cut in and told him I'm not there for him. I told him that I was only there to tell him how much a disgrace he was to my parenthood. He continued to look at me, but I was determined to tell him all the things that I could not say to him while growing up. I told him that he raised me to believe that I was nothing because I was not the precious boy he wanted with his darling wife. I gave a short, amusing laughter before I continued. Oh, so much for her being your darling wife. You ducked another woman right under her nose, and she didn't even know. You had a whole family outside, away from your darling wife. How wicked. I was breathing very heavy, and he managed to sit up. I said, Dixon, where I was going just in case anything happened to me. I told him I had a daughter, and I saw the shock look on his face, and I said to him that I was very protective of my darling girl, and that I prayed she would never get to meet him. He shifted on the bed but said nothing, and I told him I was leaving and would allow him to reap his rewards. Where's your wife, huh? And your most beloved son? Where's your mistress? I was trembling as I spoke those words. I told him that he abandoned me and sent me away because why? Well, guess what? I was the one who was there. I was the one who had the money that he needed, but I would not give him that, because he should go to his ducking boys and that woman to get himself out of this mess. He starts coughing, and Mom ran into the room. The man had some hold on her, but I did not care. I had come to say what I came to say. Mom screamed that I should leave. I told her right back not to tell me what to do. I was an adult, no longer the small defenseless girl she knew, and I screamed all this back before leaving. She was making a call to the doctor, and I was glad. I finally gave Dad some peace of mind, and I had been dying to hear myself say these things for the longest time. I was always scared of him, never able to really tell him how I felt. On the days I had my outburst, I still could not really communicate how I really felt, but this day, I was able to do it, and I was glad. I'd been carrying that burden everywhere I went, and the minute I could talk about it that way and let all the rage out, the burden lifted and I felt new. I felt like I had let go of most of the hurt and I was on a journey of raising my own daughter to be a better person. I ran home into the comforting arms of Dixon when I reached home and we simply laid together. No, I did not pay off his surgery. And yes, he deserved it. It would serve as a lesson to those who are never content and just ruin childhood for their entire children. I can only hope that my trauma completely leaves me soon. I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. Being able to talk to you and lash out and be myself here, it's been the greatest thing. It's something that I will never forget.
Alright, I was surprised by the comments on this one, guys. A lot of people were skipping over the fact that OP was treated so poorly growing up, and they were just focusing on the fact that, well, her father was probably going to die because she didn't want to pay for the surgery, and a lot of people were saying that that was wrong. Well, I don't know, guys. I'm coming here for your opinion on that. I just can't get over the fact of the way OP was treated her entire life, which led to her ultimate decision to basically tell him to go kick rocks. So I do want to know where your opinion falls on that. Drop your comments down below in the comment section. Guys, thank you for joining me on today's video. My name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these sort of stories every single day. So if you do want to be a part of these daily videos, all you gotta do is hit that big red subscribe button right underneath this video. Thank you once again. I'll see you tomorrow, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.